Hey there, folks. Welcome back, and I hope you've been well. Today we're going to go over some modal verbs. What are modal verbs, you ask? When you want to give advice or make recommendations, you can use a variety of modal verbs like could, might, should, and must. Modal verbs are helping verbs that help main verbs and modify the meaning of the main verbs in some way. Let's go over some modal verbs now. First, we will see what type of recommendations we can give using various modal verbs. Making recommendations is very similar to giving ideas. One of the most common ways of recommending something or suggesting is to use modal verbs. For example, you could visit Central Park when you travel to New York. In this sentence, could is helping the verb visit and adding the nuance of suggestion to the verb visit, and you're generally suggesting that it would be nice to visit Central Park if you have a chance. The could used in this statement is a suggestion to do something if they have time or the chance to, not something that the person should do. The next example, you might want to see John before you go on vacation. In this sentence, might want to is a recommendation that you feel is a good thing or useful thing. You feel that it'll be positive or benefit the person. So here we're saying that it'll be useful or a good thing if this person sees John before they go on vacation. The third one, you should attend the party. There will be a lot of influential people there and you will have a chance to get to know them. The modal verb should is also used for making suggestions, but it is a stronger expression than could or might, and implies that it is something strongly suggested that the person should do. In this example, we're telling the person that they should go to the party because they'll meet important people and possibly make connections which can benefit them later on. The last example, you must or have to ride the Simpsons ride when you visit Universal Studios. Must or have to is used for very strong recommendations. So this sentence is saying that you definitely have to ride the Simpsons ride because it's such a fun ride that they'll regret not riding it. Now let's practice making some recommendations. Let's look at the first situation here. Everything about this hotel, from the service to the actual room condition, is unacceptable. In this situation, how do you make recommendations to your friends? If it was me, these are the different ways I would say to my friend. You should talk to the manager about the room and the service so that they can do something for you. If they don't do anything, then you should ask for a refund and change hotels. You must or have to talk to the manager about the room and service so that they can do something for you. If they don't do anything, then you must or have to ask for a refund and change hotels. So in these two examples, which one would you choose? So if it was me, if I want to make a strong recommendation, then the first example using should be used. However, if you want to use an even stronger recommendation that no matter what they have to do the following, then the second example using must or have to should be used. So the next set of examples let's go through. I paid for a room with an ocean view, but all I can see is the wall of the building across from us. So here, how do you make a recommendation to your friend? You can say, you must or have to change the room to an ocean view. You must or have to ask for what you paid for. Here we're telling the friend, right, that no matter what, they have to change rooms because they paid for the ocean view. Plus, you should ask for a room upgrade since they made a mistake. So here in this example, this is a recommendation, but it's weaker than must or have to because they are under no obligation to receive a room upgrade from the hotel. Let's look at the last situation here. I booked a flight for my business trip and there was only one seat left, so I had to take the seat which is right next to the galley. I heard that it's very noisy because flight attendants prepare the meals there. So in this type of situation, how do you make a recommendation to your friend? You can say, I know, I once sat there too. It's very noisy, so it's impossible to fall asleep. You should keep checking to see if there's another seat available. So this is a stronger recommendation that the person keeps looking for other available seats because it'll benefit them. And we can also say, right? And you might want to bring earplugs. So you might want to is used here because as a recommendation, it'll be useful to the person because of the noise. So in this next section, we're going to go over giving advice using modal verbs. So giving advice. You can also use modals to give advice based on facts. These can highlight the negative consequences of ignoring the advice. For example, it's very cold outside. You should wear a thick coat. So here we use should, right? Because it's used to give general advice. This is a general and the most common way to give advice. Because it's very cold and there is a possibility that the person can get sick, you are recommending that the person wear a thick coat outside. In the next example, you can also say, you must or have to wear a thick coat or you'll catch a cold. When you use must or have to for advice, you are giving a very strong advice, and implies that if the other person doesn't follow the advice, he or she may suffer the consequences, such as catching a cold or constantly shivering due to the cold weather. It's considered the strongest and most emphatic advice. In some instances, must or have to is used in a commanding nuance, as if the person doesn't do something, there will be a problem or consequences. Let me give you another example. You have to be at the station by 9 p.m., otherwise you'll miss the last bus. There are also other ways to give advice using the phrases, if I were, if I was you, if I was in your shoes, if it was me, or you'd better. For example, if I were you, I would wear a thick coat. From a conversation perspective, the reason we use were instead of was is because the sentence is used for hypothetical situations. This is a condition which is contrary to the fact or reality. The fact is, I'm not you. You might hear people say if I was you instead of if I were you. And although if I was you is incorrect grammatically, from a casual speaking scenario, it is acceptable and commonly used. If I were you is used when giving advice to another person if you were in the same or a similar position to the person. You imagine yourself in their position or situation and how you would react or what you would do. Let's look at a few more samples here. If I was you, I would find another job first before quitting. If I was you, I would talk to him. These expressions have the nuance that you understand their situation and know how they feel, so you are empathizing with them. Here's another way to give advice. You had better, or you'd better wear a thick coat. This is used to give a very strong advice that they should really wear a thick coat because it's very cold outside. In some situations, the nuance comes off as a threat to the other person, almost like if they don't do something, there will be consequences. For example, you better be home by 9 p.m., otherwise I'm going to come look for you. This is a very strong expression and in some instances can be perceived as a threat. Now let's practice giving some advice. So let's go over some practical advice examples and choose the most appropriate expressions. Holy shit, you were bit by a snake. That snake may be poisonous. In this situation, which modal verb or phrase are you going to use? You must, should, if I were you, I would, or you'd better, go to the doctor or it'll get worse. So in this sentence, which would we use? Remember, there's more than one appropriate expression. You must works here because remember we said you must is a very strong expression and it's appropriate to use here because if they don't go to the doctor, they will regret it because their condition may get worse. Can we use you should? No, not really, because it's not strong enough and doesn't convey the urgency or criticality of going to the doctor. The next expression, if I were you, can also be appropriate to use here because I'm saying that if I was in his or her position, I would go to the doctor. Final expression, you'd better, is also appropriate to use here because this is also a very strong persuasive expression. And the consequence is that the person's condition will worsen. Now let's look at the second situation here. The last boat is almost here. If we don't want to miss the boat, what are you going to say? If we don't want to miss the boat, we should, must, we had better, or we have to hurry. All the expressions here are appropriate to use. However, if you are in a rush and there is a sense of urgency, then we must or we had better and we have to hurry would be better options as they convey a sense of urgency. And finally, let's look at the last situation here. Your friend is saying, I did an annual checkup last week. Everything looked okay, but my blood sugar, it went up so high. Which advice would you give to your friend? You drink so much soda. You must or have to quit drinking soda first and then start exercising. You had better quit drinking soda first and then start exercising. If I were you, I would quit drinking soda first and then start exercising. Or, you should quit drinking soda first and then start exercising. So in this example that we went over, with the exception of you should, all of the other expressions are appropriate to use, as they all express concern, and they are all very strongly telling the friend to quit drinking soda and to exercise. You should is not an ideal expression to use here because it's not strong enough or doesn't convey how critical it is to quit drinking soda and to exercise. So, I understand it's a bit confusing knowing which modal verbs to use when giving an advice. Just remember that you use must or have to when you want to express your concern very strongly about their situation, and make sure that they do what you tell them to do. And should can be used when they are in a situation where you just want to give a general advice or recommendation. I hope you learned a lot about modal verbs today and found this lesson useful. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone.